Singapore and China have inked a record 27 agreements at the Joint Council for Bilateral Cooperation, or JCBC, held in China's Chongqing city. The forum is the highest bilateral platform between both countries. Singapore's Deputy Prime Minister Gan Yong says these agreements reaffirm how both sides are committed to work together in the spirit of mutual trust and respect. Si Hui reports.
From finance and green economy to food supply as well as youth and sports, these are the many areas that Singapore and China have strengthened collaboration. It includes a pilot that allows Singapore travelers to top up Chinese yuan into their digital wallets to make merchant payments in China. DBS has also been appointed as Singapore's second renminbi clearance bank to support the use of the currency for trade and investment. And to strengthen Singapore's food security, meat imports such as poultry, beef and pork can be expected from places like Chongqing and Heilongjiang province soon.
This year's JCBC is taking place as countries worldwide face an uncertain geopolitical environment, rapid technological changes, and global economic headwinds. Each of our two countries have been making plans to navigate this uncertain future. It is therefore all the more important for Singapore and China to continue to find ways to cooperate, anticipating challenges and capitalizing on new opportunities for our businesses and our peoples.
面向未来，中心作为文化相通、利益相融的发展伙伴，要进一步地落实两国领导人重要共识，加强团结协作，坚定维护共同利益，继续用好中心双边合作机制，会以这样一个管总的平台。
Meeting on the sidelines of the JCBC, the leaders also agreed that both countries should continue enhancing trade links and economic connectivity. Regional developments were also discussed, with Singapore stating that it abides by the One China policy. Singapore and China are also marking the 10th anniversary of the Chongqing Connectivity Initiative, the third government-to-government project between both sides. At this year's JCBC, both countries laid out the next phase of the project in the coming decade, with collaboration expanding to emerging sectors as well as newer areas such as education and healthcare. During a media interview, Singapore leaders noted the progress made by the Chongqing project. In particular, the international land-sea trade corridor that will extend its reach to growing markets along the Belt and Road, including Central Asia.
This is what we used to say, this is a pathfinder project. They show the way how we can break out of the constraints of the constraints that the city face, like Chongqing.
Digital Development and Information Minister Josephine Teo added that it was critical to refresh the vision for the Chongqing project.
It catered to important developments in the global environment where trade and investment trends have become much more constrained, much more difficult and challenging. At the same time, it responds to the important mega trends that both countries have to deal with, and which is digitalization and sustainability.
Leaders also visited key sites of the project as part of commemorative activities. Displays highlighted achievements across key sectors like finance and transport. Mr. Gan was also hosted to dinner by Chongqing's Communist Party chief Yuan Jiajun, before ending the night with a drone show featuring icons from Singapore and Chongqing, marking 35 years of Singapore-China diplomatic ties. Si Hui, CNA, Chongqing, China.
For more on this, we speak to Mr. Kok Ping Soon, a Chief Executive Officer at the Singapore Business Federation. And now, when you listen to a record 27 agreements between Singapore and China, which areas of agreement matter most to the SBF now, and why is that?
Well, I think the slew of agreements just reflects that, despite the rising geopolitical uncertainties and economic headwinds, I think both countries are actually quite committed to expand and deepen the already very strong economic ties. I think for businesses, there are three broad benefits as a result of this enhanced cooperation. I think number one, it provides increased market access for Singapore products and services into China. Actually, under the upgraded China-Singapore FTA, 95% of Singapore exports to China are already tariff-free, and foreign equity limits have been lifted for Singapore businesses in over 20 sectors. What I heard in today's slew of announcements are further opportunities of market access for some of our goods and services. I think you have heard about the export of processed meat to China from Singapore manufacturers, and also the designation of DBS as a renminbi clearing bank, which will allow DBS to participate in the internationalization of RMB. Two, I hope that this enhanced collaboration would also mean more Chinese firms setting up in Singapore. I think there are about 8,000 Chinese firms already operating in Singapore. Most of them are in trading and infrastructure. You hear about cooperation in new areas like digital as well as green innovation. So hopefully more Singapore, or rather more Chinese technology companies will set up shop in Singapore. And third, what I hear from the announcement is talking about collaboration that's being extended into third country markets. That means actually additional opportunities for our firms to partner the Chinese counterparts as they internationalize to Southeast Asia through Singapore.
Well, you sound like optimistic about the steps that are being taken. But if I was to press you on the sectors that you feel are poised to gain in the areas that have been identified cooperation, what do these mean for Singapore enterprises, and where particularly, which sectors do you feel could benefit the most?
Well, I think about three broad sectors will benefit. I think first, I think Singapore businesses in the infrastructure, in logistics, in supply chain will stand to gain considerably, given China's emphasis on strengthening and enhancing supply chain connectivity and resilience across the region. Number two, I think our professional services sector will also see greater opportunities as more Chinese enterprise invest overseas and will look for partners in legal, in financial and consultancy services. And three, with China being at the forefront of green transformation and technological advancement, it also presents opportunities for our businesses to work alongside the Chinese enterprise to pioneer sustainable and technological solutions for the wider region.
You mentioned resilience, and that's particularly important when it comes to Singapore's food security. What specific mechanisms, such as supply chains or investment in agri-tech, could be implemented? And how do you think these initiatives strengthen Singapore's broader resilience strategy?
Well, as you know, Singapore imports more than 90% of our food needs, which make us particularly vulnerable to external shocks and supply disruptions. So it's important that we have diversified sources. If we want to take full advantage of this food security collaboration with China, I think we'll need investments in cold chain and logistics to be able to move the agriculture produced safely and cheaply from China to Singapore. I think we also need investments in building up our regulatory inspection, our food safety and food standards to ensure food safety. And finally, I think if there's opportunities, we should see how Singapore firms might participate and invest further upstream in China directly to secure our supply chain.
Oh, the JCBC is often described as an apex bilateral platform for strategic direction. It is, after all, a government-to-government sort of meetings. Singapore enterprises, are they seeing real benefits from these kinds of meetings? And how can Singapore enterprises best leverage on such high-level forums going forward?
Well, I think Singapore businesses will do well by aligning their business strategies with the priority areas that's identified under the JCBC. I think all these many agreements that you see provide what I call kind of a political cover, right? For businesses to engage their Chinese partners to try to translate those words in the agreement into actually actions on the ground and hopefully profitable business ventures. So businesses can engage our economic agencies. They can also engage trade associations that are active in China, including the Chinese Chamber, as well as the SBF, to facilitate their interests, to seek assistance, they face hindrances, and also importantly, to give feedback on what else can be done to enhance economic cooperation between China and Singapore.
Does that also extend to the current global environment of tariffs and trade protectionism? How can the JCBC offer help to Singapore enterprises there?
Well, I think the JCBC has called out I heard the statement that, I think both countries are committed to a multilateral rules-based system. So it's important that we see how we can work with the Chinese also to see how we can do that, leveraging on the many FTAs that we have already concluded. There's also a China-ASEAN FTA that we should see how we can make progress to upgrade it to allow more free trade in the region.
Well, we always appreciate your time with us. Thank you to Mr. Kok Ping Soon, CEO at the SBF.